What's up, my diggers? Man, I own a lot of medals and commendations and accolades in the military, but I guess the biggest thing that I guess I have earned in my life is probably the N-word pass, and I've held that since since about high school. So pretty happy with that one. So fuck all the medals and all the fucking hoo-ha that goes on Anzac Day. I can walk around saying the N-word as I please. And I guess, it matches my dark sense of humor. And that's what this podcast is all about. I think the only thing darker than my sense of humor is probably the plantation slaves that I own in the cotton fields behind my house. And that's fine, because, you got to keep the people employed. You got to keep the people putting food on the table for their families. And fucking the world's gone to shit. Apparently it's fucking all going down in Ukraine. Normally my Instagram feed is just filled with Instagram thoughts and various gun companies and just fucking malarkey and a couple of bogan pages, maybe a few fucking utes doing skids. But right now, as I scroll through fucking half cut in the morning, sipping on a Milo, it's just Ukraine footage. It's just mostly footage of dead Russian soldiers, but obviously keen to see some dead Ukrainians as well, because we've got to mix it up. I think the Chechens fucked me up by joining, I did that last podcast saying how I'd probably support Russia if they ever invaded, which inevitably happened about fucking 30 minutes after I stopped recording the last podcast. So shout out to the fucking Chechens for just stitching me up once again, because they've sided with the Russians for some strange reason, and decided to fight for them against the Ukrainians. So it really fucked me up, but so I guess I've switched sides again back to the Ukraine. But really, I don't need to take sides anymore. I'm not in the military, so I'm not forced to choose a side. I've been involved in some conflicts around the world where I didn't necessarily agree with the side that they were on. They were just the dudes that we ended up fucking partnering with. They were just the heroin wholesalers at the time that we were willing to support. Shout out to the Taliban. But yeah, man, I guess the potty's going well. Still haven't been zucked again, which is quite hard to believe. So there must be something going on in the background where they want me to keep doing podcasts for some reason. Some of these stories I've actually told before, and I saw a meme recently where it said something about you realize how fucked up your life is when you make a joke and no one laughs. They just think that you're a psychopath, and I guess that's potentially what some people think when they listen to this potty, because I remember actually spinning that sandcastle story, Worry, to a couple of IETs. So I was actually in the very end of my career. I got sent out to the conventional army for the first time in my my whole career, 12-year career. Just we won't get into why, but I was sent out to the conventional forces, and I was an instructor. So as a corporal in the army, I was booming it up and teaching cunts some lessons of things that I'd learned. And sometimes it happens. I think I've discussed it before, but where outfield, sometimes when you're just doing a training exercise, some absolute fucking sick cunt with heaps of knowledge and experience will come out and just take a knee and say, go non-tactical for half an hour. If you got a fucking durry or you want to have a feed, fucking do it. And we all just get in a circle. We face in. The exercise is off. Essentially just press pause for a while. And some senior instructor with fucking some good experience, even an instructor with no experience, just wants to tell you some fucking cool shit that happened at one point in time in their career. And it's a good chance to just fucking zone out and chill out and forget that you're in high range Townsville or in fucking Puckapunyal and you're hating your life. You just have a chance to just zone out for a second and be a normal cunt like you're at the pub and listen to a Worry or two. And I remember when I was on my Rio course, that actually happened. This absolutely cooked cunt, who I think got kicked out of the unit later on, came out, and I was thinking, man, is this an operator? Is this the pinnacle of special operations? But it made sense that, I heard just after our selection course, he got kicked out. So that makes sense. But he sat down with us and said, just go non-tactical and let's just fucking have a chin wag, and obviously dudes are asking him about Afghan and what it's like to shoot some cunt in the face, and it was really interesting to hear his thoughts on that. And it was good. So I thought, well, one day when I become an instructor, if that ever happens, after fucking 10 years, I was still a fucking lance piss or something, because I chose that as a career path. I didn't want to be promoted. Right now, I should be a sergeant, if not a warrant officer class 2. And cunts would be calling me sir, which is insane to think if you look at the fucking malarkey that I've been up to in my life. But I chose to forego promotion courses. So whenever a promotion course came up, so in the Air Force and Navy, it's not like that. You just kind of show up to work and they throw you a rank and you've been promoted after a certain period of time in some cases, in most cases. But in the Army, you actually got to earn it. So when you've been deployed for fucking 8 months of the year, you've been on exercise for another 3 months of that, you've been on tag, you've been flat fucking stick, you're trying to take leave, you're trying to go to Thailand with the boys, and then the Army want to put you on a 8-week promotion course to learn how to lead. And I remember when I did my promotion course up in Townsville, up at, shout out to Wonko, where I got the fucking trainee of merit. And obviously if you're posted up there or you're heading to Wonko to do a promotion course, fucking someone get me a photo of the fucking board from, I think it was 2016, where I got trainee of merit. Shout out to myself, being a sick cunt. And not because I was better than any of the other soldiers there. There was a lot of grunts that were actually killing it a lot more than me. So there was about probably 20 dudes on the course that were better than me, that actually cared about the promotion course because they wanted to be promoted. Or they wanted to be promoted, so they got themselves out of the hardest job in the Army, which is probably the 2IC Infantry Battalion. But if they got a trainee of merit, it might have fast-tracked their selection process. So the CO of the unit is like the gatekeeper, because he doesn't want cunts to keep applying for SAS and 2 Commando and then end up passing and leaving the unit and create a gap in his capability. So when you've got 100 cunts every year trying to put their selection applications in from fucking 1RAR up in Townsville, he might only let 10 people go. Now, the CEO of SOTEC down in Sydney can override that, I've heard, and just say, well, nah, fuck it, we don't care. SF capability is more important than yours, and override that decision and let them all on. But for the most part, that doesn't happen, and they only let 10 on. And also the CEO of SOTEC is a fucking moron. So dudes are on these promotion courses up in Townsville going fucking hard, and there were some fucking weapons soldiers on my course, and it was pretty impressive to see like such young dudes with no combat experience fucking leading the charge and giving some hot tips, and obviously trying to bang all the QE chicks that were on my course. But I just happened to be in a gun position up in high range for the 2-week exercise you do at the end, where I was the very last gun pit. So throughout the night, I would hear the instructors yelling and just reaming at cunts that they would find sleeping in the gun positions at night, who had fallen asleep on picket, which is a big no-no overseas on operations. But when you're doing an exercise, who really gives a fuck? The enemy party doesn't want to be out there any more than you do, so no one's really actually trying to get into a position and cut throats at night. I don't think they would know what to do if they came up on someone asleep on a gun position or actually made their way into the harbour. They'd probably just eat your fucking rations and then leave. So who really cares? But I could hear cunts getting yelled at all night, and by the time they got to me and all those dudes had been reamed and charged, it woke me up. So I ended up being the last man standing, where I didn't get charged for that whole course, although I probably should have been, because I crashed a fucking scooter into a parked car and fucking threw myself over the bonnet of a fucking car riding illegally in Townsville. But I did end up getting trainee of merit. And when they called my name out on parade, it was kind of funny seeing the looks on all the instructors' faces, because I had more medals than the instructors there that were teaching us about leadership. So, it's just a fucking another day in the life of ScoJo, just overachieving. And if you can get me a photo of that fucking Wonko board, I think it was about 2016. Fucking Sig S. Jones should be up on in the history books, and probably Angus has got up there and scratched it out because he's fucking so off me. Because apparently what I'm doing is really bad, but the way that I look at it is that I told you about this podcast early on. I said maybe people just want to have a laugh instead of just killing themselves all the time, all these fucking sad veterans out there. And I'm going to throw it out there. Since recording season 2 of Bedtime Warriors, there hasn't been a single veteran suicide in Australia. Yeah! So, happy with that statistic. Haven't seen the Pineapple Express post any suicide fucking notifications since I started this podcast back up again. And don't be a jack cunt and ruin my fucking streak, because I'm sure there's some military police or IGADF investigators down in Canberra who, out of spite of me and this podcast, are now going to go up themselves and throw themselves off a fucking roof or something just to spite me. But hopefully it's helping some cunts and remembering that, you can laugh about all the dumb shit that happened. But like I was saying, some of these warriors, when you get an instructor coming out field, sorry for my fucking tangent, but you get the instructor coming out field to give you all these lessons. So when I became an instructor in the conventional army, I tried to do the same thing because that's what I liked. And I could be retarded, but I think that that's what a lot of the diggers want too. That's why you can't listen to this podcast probably. So I'm out field teaching some cunts about fucking whatever I was teaching them, and a senior officer showed up who's a legend. And he went off in another direction to speak to another section. So he went to do that. And I was sitting there with my little section. And who comes out to hang with us? Well, the Padre. Now, what a Padre is, in the military, or what they fucking told us at Kapuka, whether it's true or not, they said that a lot of people that get captured, and obviously don't ever get captured, you're a fucking idiot if you do, they found that POWs in POW camps that were there for years on end, they found that there was a statistic that a higher rate of people survived in captivity if they had religious beliefs, whatever religion that was. So before while you're at Kapuka, the only kind of day that you get off to yourself, you get a few hours if you choose to go to, it's kind of a little bit sneaky now that I think about it, you are forced to sit in your room and clean your brass on a Sunday morning at Kapuka when I was there, or you could go to church, have a sip of wine and just literally chill out for 3 hours and use your phone and shit. So obviously every cunt goes to church. There's only one or two dudes that are hell-bent on just fucking getting their brass fucking shiny that stay behind. I don't know what it's like now. So for that reason, there's a big influence still in the military of padres. I think Christian and Catholic for the most part that sort of kick around. So every unit has a padre. And if you get sent to see the padre, it usually means that they're going to kick you out psychologically. So that kind of says how much they care about what the padre has to say. However, the padres would sort of come out and hang with us out in the field. So the padre sits down, and I was recently I caught up with one of the trainees that I had, who was there at the time, who I happened to meet up with, who was deployed to a foreign land, who I had a brew with while I was traveling through that area last year. And that individual mentioned to me that one of the loosest things that she remembers me doing was that the padre was talking about war and the effect that it can have on the human mind and fucking whatnot, and just doing his thing. And we're all sitting in a circle just chilling out. And the padre said to me, "Hey, Skojo, you've probably seen a fair bit of war. What's the loosest thing that you've ever seen, and how did you cope with it?" Now, he probably didn't realize at the time that he's talking to an absolute fucking psychopath who's responsible for multiple mass graves throughout the Middle East. So when you ask someone a question, you really got to choose your audience and think about what you're asking them. And is that person a complete psychopath that will actually then just openly tell a story? Which I did. So I started to tell the story in graphic detail that I spoke about briefly in the last potty about sandcastles. And as you can imagine, when I described in detail children scooping their father's brain and trying to slap it back into his skull to revive their dead dad, who one of the boys had shot, who was running with an AK-47 to ambush our boys, he looked he was about to throw up. He was not really impressed with that story, but the trainees loved it. And that's the main thing, right? The story, yeah, the Padre asked the question, but it wasn't for the Padre. It was for the boys and girls. And yeah, I got to spin a cheeky warrior outfield that I guess they'll all remember. Some may have nightmares about, but yeah, you can only speak from your experiences and the things that you've seen over on operations. And yeah, that's probably why this podcast is so successful, because so many loose cunts that I tell this story to, that I told these stories to just at the pub or fucking, on Anzac Day or outfield with the trainees back in the day, I could see the looks on their faces, that how impressed they were and trying to work out if I was talking shit or is this real. And either way, they were infatuated. So I enjoy spilling these worries, and it's funny. It's funny to me. But people like the Padres and other people that hear these stories that think it's fucking a bit out of line to be talking about that stuff. I get it, but there is a whole bunch of cunts in our military that are absolutely just fucking retarded. And I'd like to tell you one story. I'll try and upload this photo. I've got a photo of it. It's a pretty infamous photo that a lot of people, when they come to my house, ask me about this certain item that I have, this certain artifact that I kept from Afghanistan. And no, it's not a fucking ear necklace or a fucking dude's nose or some gold teeth like the World War II diggers used to keep of the Japanese soldiers they killed up on Kokoda, which I have seen in the flesh, and it's pretty impressive. What I'm talking about is when I was in Afghanistan, and we've talked about how I used to play sweet beats to the Taliban, play Miley Cyrus to them to confuse and disorientate those cunts during combat. Now, something that I was meant to actually be doing, and I won't get too much into it, but in Afghanistan, people would know that there are radio stations. And those radio stations broadcast fucking general shit like ads on where you can buy a mail order goat for your son's fucking 18th or whatever. And they also play that shitty Taliban music that sounds like a cat being run over by a steamroller. And then you've also got propaganda channels where the Taliban push out, or the government push out messaging about fucking how the coalition are helping, or the Taliban push out how the coalition are a bunch of shit guns. Either way, these radio stations are pretty popular over there. And we actually had teams of PSYOPs people. Now, I'd never worked, I've always been involved in what we call the green roll, which is putting campaign on your face, rappelling out of a helicopter, showing up in a small boat, jumping out of a plane, landing, stomping in 20 Ks and doing a hit on a target. That's what I love doing. Other people do other things in the military, but the green roll is what I love. That's what I frothed on. Yes, I did a fair bit of time in the black roll, which is that tag roll. I did some grey roll stuff, which is that sneaky squirrel shit we won't really get into, that predominantly the SAS do when I was working with those guys. But what I loved was the green roll. And so I never had a chance to work with anyone in human intelligence or PSYOPs, which seems kind of cool and something that you might hear in a fucking Jason Bourne movie or a Jack Ryan novel. But at the end of the day, PSYOPs people are just fucking retarded. And what kind of happened was they got a container full of blankets. They ordered in these fucking blankets, the PSYOP staff, and what they were telling operators, shooters, FE Bravo, the commandos that had done multiple deployments to Afghanistan, killed a fuckload of people. Most of them had citations and medals for gallantry. And they ordered in a container load full of these huge king-size plush blue and pink blankets that in Pashtun writing all over the blanket, it said, this blanket is big enough to cover the whole of Afghanistan. And it was coming into winter time. So after doing about 50 fucking operations outside the wire, one of the last jobs, they wanted us to go out there in Bushmasters and hand out blankets to the people of Afghanistan as a hearts and mind campaign. Are you fucking retarded? Look at Afghanistan, what happened in Kabul last year, where they just fucking, people were willing to blow themselves up in crowds of people just so that they could get a few soldiers. They killed over 100 innocent Taliban sympathizers outside the Kabul airport that were fleeing their country instead of fighting, just to have a crack at killing one or two coalition soldiers. And I think they killed 13 Americans, to be fair. Shout out to those boys. RIP. So these are the type of people that you have in our military that are that fucking retarded that they think that that's a good idea. That that's a safe idea to risk Australian lives to go and hand out blankets to the Taliban. Are you fucking serious? So that never happened. Every single one of those blankets, we told that idiot that was in charge of that little PSYOPs project that we did that. But we actually, if she went into our rooms, which she probably did at some point, she would have seen that everyone had one of those blankets on their bed instead of their sleeping bag. Because we're not fucking idiots. We're not going out there to hand blankets out. So I kept that blanket, and just before the war ended in 2013, I mailed that blanket home to myself. So when I got home, that blanket was sitting in my mail, in my PO box, and I washed that bitch about 20 times to get the stank of Afghan out of it. Well, she's still fucking on my couch to this day. And people come around and go, I thought you hated Afghanistan. Why do you have a Pashtun blanket? What does that say? And it says, this blanket is big enough to keep the whole of Afghanistan warm, but I didn't want them to keep warm because I fucking hated them. And it makes me laugh every single time that I see it. So maybe that's a way to deal with your mental health from Afghanistan, is just to fucking laugh at the Afghans every now and then. If you're having a bad day, open up something that made you laugh at the Afghan people and laugh at them, because it's pretty kind of funny what happened. So yeah, I mean, I had a couple of other fucking awkward interactions. I mean, we talk about the Padre and sort of how that went down, and he's probably scarred to this day, but no more scarred than I was growing up. And I want to talk to you about a little story that happened when I was a young man, and maybe this shaped my, adolescence and made me the person that I am today. So what happened was, I grew up, as I've said before, in a little beautiful part of the world, a little slice of heaven called Campbelltown in southwest Sydney. A great place to grow up, really safe and good and wholesome. But, I lived in a place called Ambervale, which is kind of a shithole, let's be honest. And it was pretty rough. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And I'm proud of where I grew up. And I think about 5 dudes from my high school that grew up in Campbelltown were in our commando company alone. So obviously a lot of cunts, you either choose selling meth, boosting cars, or becoming a tradie, or maybe join the army. So most cunts join the army, and then they realize, well, if you're from Campbelltown, you're probably a hard cunt. You've probably experienced hardships already through your life. You had to fight your way to and from school. So, doing selection and becoming a commando wasn't really a big deal. So maybe that's why I found it so easy. And not that it was easy, but I just had a crack and obviously got through. So where I grew up, when I think my old man got a better job when I was in my early teens in high school, we moved to the fancy part of Campbelltown, which was Glen Alpine. And I'd love to live there now. It's fucking sick spot. It's got a golf course. It's fucking pimp. And on one side of the house that we grew up in, there was a whole bunch of cops. Absolute fucking legends. Well, they weren't cops then. One of them was. And then the other 2 brothers then became cops. And recently they hit me up on the gram, and those boys are all cops now, doing well. I remember their dad was a cop, and then one of the oldest brother was a cop, and now one of the other boys is a cop, and yeah, it's fucking so good to fucking catch up with cunts that I forgot about, that, I grew up with, and we had some fucking laughs. And I remember I was only about 15 or 16, and it was probably one of the first house parties I ever went to because it was next door. I got invited over to their place, and they were smashing yard glasses for the lads' 18th. And there was a couple of strippers there, and we got fucking lit. I got lit with a whole bunch of cops as a 15-year-old, so I always found myself more sympathetic to the police and military government way of thinking and career path than, selling meth or stealing cars or red packeting cunts for Shabu down at high school like a lot of the other boys were. So on the other side of my house was a lovely family, awesome family of Palestinians. And, everyone knows Palestinians are fucking wild. Shout out to the Jews. Palestine isn't real, but back in the day, I didn't really know much about the conflict over there. All I could say was that every time something kicked off next door, man, this dude was wild. This family, all the boys were absolutely wild. Like proper Palestinians, the ones that you kind of see throwing rocks over a fence at an Israeli soldier who's got a gun. Smart idea, boys. But they were absolutely insane, and they were legends. And I went to, I think, one of their daughter's weddings, and fucking, it was a good time. It fucking opened my world up. And they used to have some hectic food that they would bring around, fucking plates of kebabs and shit every week, and I'd just smash it. I was a well cultured and versed man. And one of their daughters, shout out to her, she was my age, and she was I'm like a 15-year-old dude with a 15-year-old chick living next door, who was a lovely girl, extremely beautiful. And me and her were very good friends. And then we used to hang out a lot. And then one day when kind of we turned about 18, she kind of left home and ran away with some dude. And this is when Facebook kind of just came out. Like Facebook was just getting big, right? It was like a new thing. It was like what TikTok is to kids now, right? So everyone's on Facebook. It's the new MySpace. And she was pretty loose on Facebook back then. And I logged in one day, and the dude that she'd ran off with ended up being some fucking piece of shit who just was posting videos of them two fucking, right? So it was like proper, what we would call now revenge porn, which is fucked. And if you do that, you're a fucking piece of shit. But this dude was literally sharing and tagging her in posts of her just getting railed on a table. And I was just like, holy fuck. She's run away. She doesn't have a phone or anything. This is before you could log into Facebook on your phone. So you had to use a computer. And I knew where she was. She didn't have one. And I'm like, I ran next door to try and find her sisters to be like, we need to fucking help her. Because I could see on the comments of the Facebook section, her aunties and shit who are extremely obviously religious Palestinians writing like, oh my God, don't ever shop at my house again. And I'm like, oh man, this chick's life's over. And she was a good cunt. So I ran over there, tried to find her sisters, trying to find like a way to help her so we could like report it or, get her to the cop station to, I don't know, fucking do something about it. Because it didn't obviously seem right. And her sisters weren't there, but her dad was there, who was about 7 foot tall, probably 130 kilos, and a full psycho Palestinian. But he liked me, which was good. And he said, what's up, Scott? Like, what is up, Scott? What is going on? You look very upset. And I'm like, oh, yeah, look, there's this thing called Facebook, and there's this video that this guy put up of your daughter getting absolutely railed on a table, and it's not cool, and I want to tell the cops, but I don't know what to do. I don't know, I'm just a fucking kid. And this is the first time in my life. It's probably, a lot's happened in my life. I've been in some very awkward situations. I've been shot at, I've been blown up, I've been fucking almost killed in helicopter crashes and skydiving accidents and whatnot. But I always think when people say to me, what's the most hectic thing that you've ever been through? Well, it was this very moment when the dad said, show me. And I'm like, what? And he's like, take me into your bedroom on your computer and show me the video so I know what you're talking about. Ooh, that was not a good experience. imagine watching a porno with a dude and his daughter's in the porno on Facebook in like, mid 2000s, sweating, pressing play on the computer while he stands behind you. A fucking huge, crazy Palestinian. I thought he was going to cut my eyes out just for fucking looking at it. And he had no concept of what Facebook was. He was just literally watching a video of his daughter get railed. So that's probably the most hectic thing that I've ever been through. So when people ask me, Skojo, you fucking seen some wild shit. What's the wildest thing you've ever seen? Yeah, probably watching a dude get railed on a table while her crazy dad stood behind me. That's probably the most wildest thing that happened. And that's not the only fucking wild incident that's happened. Then, after probably my third or so deployment, I had this laptop computer and I had forgotten my password and locked myself out of my own fucking computer. And I remember when I set up the laptop, it was just like the screensaver. I don't know if you can still do this. You probably can with Windows 10, where you just essentially your photos from every photo on your computer in your, say, My Photos folder, it'll just flick through them every 10 seconds and change your wallpaper on your home screen. And I was like, fucking no dramas, just mostly footies, photos of me and the boys just fucking ramping in Afghanistan and stuff. But there obviously was a couple of loose photos in there that, in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have kept and don't know why I did. But if you look at the current Ben Robert Smith defamation trial, they all seem to keep them as well. Some dude lost his fucking hard drive that was full of photos of dead cunts and fucking wild shit, and his ex-missus took it and tried to sell it back to him and the SAS regiment for $50,000. And they had to get the AFP involved and his unit and CO and RSM involved to try and get it back off her. And all he got was taken off a deployment, it looks like. So I had a couple of loose photos, as we all do, it turns out, on my laptop at the time. And, not that I'm proud of it, but it was just something that I fucking experienced. And I was in the photo and it was just, I think it was me in a sea of fucking dead bodies, doing my thing, doing my job. Nothing malicious, but pretty fucking wild. And then I took it into JB Hi-Fi where I got the laptop from, and some little nerd was helping me unlock it. He showed me how to do a hard reboot of that type of laptop. And when it finally loaded up after like that 30-second reboot, the first photo that fucking popped up was just me in a sea of fucking dead people laughing. And he wasn't too impressed. But, as I thought he was probably about to call the cops, and he was obviously very confused as to why this skinny random dude next to him in Bondi Junction has a photo of him in a sea of dead people. It's not really something that would happen around Bondi Junction. And I didn't really tell him who I was and what I was doing and what that meant. But he looked at me and fucking winked and said, "My family's from Israel. You're doing the Lord's work." So that was good. So I've had a lot of awkward interactions with regards to IT and telling worries throughout my life. So this podcast is, a lot of people say like, "Oh man, I don't know if you should be talking about this stuff." It's like, well, I've talked about this in more wild situations than a fucking Podbean app or YouTube or Apple Music. So, fuck. And there's a lot of fucking... there was a lot of fucking awkward times overseas, but also a lot of funny times. And I remember one of the boys was absolutely railing this chick overseas in the lines that we had, those same rooms where we had all those sweet blankets. And it was about 4 to a room. I've kind of talked about this before and how the setup of our rooms were overseas. And I remember one of the boys was plowing this American chick that he had hooked up with. I think she was down from the American medical facility, down the Roll 1 facility or Roll 2, whatever it was called. But naturally, wherever there's a hospital, there's nurses. Now, whether they're civilian nurses or military nurses, nurses tend to be pretty fucking cute. I think everyone can agree with that. They whinge about pay and conditions a lot, knowing that they did a 4-year degree, which they signed up for, studied for, paid for, then they get to be a nurse and they still complain. Shout out to the fucking nurses, but a lot of them, regardless of your views on their paying conditions, they're pretty fucking cute. So he's putting away this American Army nurse in the lines and in the barracks in Camp Russell. And he remembers, the only thing that he remembers was he's putting away this chick, and he looks up, and above the dividers in the room, he just saw about 4 or 5 dudes with helmets. All he could kind of see in the darkness was that green glow of your dual night vision goggle tubes. That sort of, the back end of it glows your eyes green. And I'm sure a lot of you cunts that would listen to this podcast would know what I'm talking about. He reckons he's just plowing this bird, and he looks up and turns around, and there's just like 5 dudes with green glowing eyes, and he just knew that he was being watched by about 5 dudes slay this chick under night vision goggles. So shout out to him, shout out to the Hammer. And man, it's just so many wild things happen in the military, and yeah, you only seem to hear about the sad stories. You only seem to hear about the fucking people that are in trouble or did the wrong thing, or someone's killing themselves, or someone's sad and they're trying to raise awareness for something. But yeah, for me, whenever I think about my service in the military, I just think of all these fucking wild, funny stories. And, these days I'm just a washed up, broken loser with some dead dude's knee that got donated to me. So I don't really have time to be doing any high speed operating. So yeah, I enjoy just fucking sitting around spinning worries when I can, when I get time, when the fam let me, I guess. So yeah, that's the episode, cunts. And if any of you jack cunts down in Canberra kill yourselves and ruin my streak of having season 2, we're in the 4th or 5th episode now, I think, and not a single person, not a single veteran has taken their own life. And I'll fucking hang my hat on that, cunts. So go out there, pour yourself a Milo, enjoy life, and potentially go over to Ukraine and fucking fight for the Ukrainian people. Not because you believe in their cause, but because you like violence. And that's okay. Enjoy yourself, cunts. Hooroo, ta-da, toodles.